Yes, hi. Nou, dat is alles. Nee, je bent niet te zien, schat. Even kijken, ik zie inmiddels al een aantal mensen. Fijen, hi Fijen. Yes. Parks. Far away. Loretta. And in the meantime. Goedenavond. Laat horen dat je er bent. Schrijf berichtjes. Just write your messages here in the chat box. So I can see who is in. I saw Fijen. Anouk. Welkom, goedenavond Anouk Butter. Merdan is er. Welkom. Jan Springer, goedenavond. We werken aan de connectie met Californië. Andere kant van de wereld. Sarah, hi. Yvette, Jarno, goedenavond allemaal. Ans, Dries, Wendy, you're back. Esther, Fijian, good to see that you're here. We have 88 people in the audience tonight, which is fantastic. The star of the evening is on her way. And I've seen her on and off. Jack, goedenavond. Leuk dat jullie er zijn. Mooi op tijd. Janine, goedenavond. Esther, zie ik. En Loes, goedenavond, welkom. Jullie connectie doet het goed. Mooi om te zien. Sjanne, goedenavond, welkom. Loretta, ik denk dat zij een reset aan het doen is van haar wifi in Californië. Ze woont ten noorden van San Francisco. Het is daar 10:30 ochtends. Hetty, goedenavond. Ja, ze heeft een geweldige presentatie. Hallo, we zijn er weer. Ja? Ja, goedenavond nogmaals. Ik probeer ook met Loretta te verbinden. Ik zie inmiddels al 36 mensen. Welkom allemaal in deze in dit live webinar. Creëer een positieve mindset. En we blijven positief wat er ook gebeurt. Ik weet dat, I know that our Prime Minister was on the television at 7 this evening. I don't know what he has announced. I hope it's good news. It's working. Geraldine, hi. Emilda is in. Roweda, can you see and hear us? Loretta's also in the chat. It disconnects, so I clicked connect again. For me, it says Rasha, good evening. Astrid. Emma, hi. Hello, everybody. Okay. Ellen is also here now. There's problems. I don't know why. We've been testing before it went well. Everything should be set. Give us 5 minutes and we'll be back in no time. Okay? Thanks. Thanks, guys. See you in a moment. Okay, I think we're back to being live. Thanks for your patience. Are you still there? Let me hear you. Yes. Wanda, goedenavond. All right. I think we're good. Yes, yes. I hear someone knocking. Yes, yes. We're back.
Sorry. Okay. Good.
No,
Yeah.
I think it was on both sides. So
Okay. Yeah. No, I mean, I didn't see your message because anyway. Okay, I got it. Hooray! So hopefully the audience will know to Oh, because you sent it to all of them.
yes, they're in. We have 37 people, and they're
Good. Yes.
reconnecting as far as I can see.
Oh,
Geraldine
good.
says it's top, great
Okay.
connection. So let me do a welcome first before I officially introduce you, Loretta.
Okay. Good.
1 sec.
Can I walk away for 1 minute?
Yes, you got a glass of water or anything? Yes, go ahead.
Yes. But I'm not going to stop you, or you're going to keep going, or wait.
I will keep going to tell
Good.
something
Okay.
more about
Good. Okay.
NLP. See you in a moment. Go
Okay.
ahead. Thanks. All right. Yes, here we are. Welkom allemaal. Ik begin eerst in het Nederlands, omdat we in Nederland zijn. En ik doe een korte introductie in het Nederlands. En vervolgens ga ik over op het Engels voor ons Engelstalige publiek. En ik weet dat de Nederlanders die hier vanavond bij zijn ook Engels begrijpen. En welkom, mijn naam is June Hoeksen voor degenen die mij nog niet kennen. Ik verzorg NLP-opleidingen, NLP Neurolinguistisch Programmeren in Hartje Den Haag. Achter mij zien jullie een deel van mijn praktijk. En vanavond is een bijzondere avond met Loretta Breuning, die ons alles gaat vertellen over de 4, ik zou bijna zeggen, belangrijkste neurotransmitters. Het belangrijkste omdat zij zorgen voor een goed gevoel. En zij gaat een beetje terug in de evolutie om te verklaren hoe, wat, waarom we deze neurotransmitters hebben. En uiteraard gaat ze ons daarna tips geven. Hoe wakkeren we de aanmaak van die neurotransmitters aan? En ik schakel nu over naar het Engels. Welcome all of you. And as I was saying, I'm conducting here programs of neurolinguistic programming, having everything to do with thinking differently, thinking on purpose. Okay, someone in the chat is saying if you could all switch off the microphones. I think I should switch off also something on my side. 1 second. Yes, I hear also some noise. If you could all put your computers on mute. And also, I'm also going to, let's see. No, that should work. Yep. Oké. Ik ben goed te horen, maar ik hoor ook wat ruis. Dus als iedereen op mute kan, want ik zie niet waar ik dat op dit moment kan doen. Helaas. Even kijken hoor. Hier kan ik hier nog iets doen. Nee. Prima. Neurolinguistic programming, become your best version. It has everything to do with how your brain works. And I've learned from Dr. Bentler directly, and he puts it beautifully into words. It's thinking on purpose, using your brain and getting a grip on your brain and think differently. That's what we learn in our courses. Now, an important part is for me as a trainer also is to know how does a brain work. Now, I'm not a neuroscientist, but I've learned about the green brain juice, as we call it in our NLP courses, of the Brein Smoothie. How do you get those positive chemicals working? And I dove deep into the world of neurochemicals, and I found this great book written by Loretta, and it's called Habits of a Happy Brain. And I loved it because it gave me all the answers I was looking for in a very descriptive way, going back into evolution. It's a great book to read because it's so practical. She explains it really, really well. And I'm so excited to have her here this evening. And she's going to spend about 45 minutes explaining with a great presentation that she has prepared for us this evening. Afterwards, there'll be a room to ask your questions. And for now, I'm going to give the floor to Loretta, all the way from California. Welcome. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, okay. I'm so worried that there's going to be more technical difficulties. So I haven't made my full screen yet because last time it disconnected as soon as I did that. But that was probably a coincidence. So I'm sharing my screen now. Are you seeing it?
Yes.
Okay. I'm so relieved. Okay. So, how to be happy at home. And hopefully this is a time that we can learn this lesson and take it with us forever and not just think about short-term unusual situations. But Joan did talk to me about the short-term situations on people's minds. So that's what I will apply my framework to. So one short-term situation is fear that many people feel, and that's caused by our cortisol. And when you understand how cortisol works from an evolutionary perspective, it's so much easier to relax. Second, Joan raised the issue of self-discipline that people may confront when they have to work at home, including children having to work on their own and families working together. And that's all about dopamine, so we'll be talking about that. And finally, Joan mentioned the issue of loneliness, and I usually talk about that in terms of oxytocin, which is the chemical that gives us the good feeling of being accepted and belonging, or from an animal perspective, to being in the herd. So that's what we'll focus on in a very brief way, and my book has a lot more detail on all of this. Are you still hearing me?
I'm hearing you perfectly.
Good. Okay, good.
The audience can put some messages in the public chat, but I think they want to focus on your presentation.
Right.
So
good. Okay,
it's good.
So, now how a gazelle lives with threat. Hopefully you're seeing a picture of a lion and a gazelle. Yes. So in the animal world, threat is part of life. Threat is constant. So animals can't say, well, I'm not going out until there's no threats. So how do they manage to stay calm? How do they manage to go about their business in a world where they can't control threats and constant threat? And the bottom line is they have confidence in their own skills. And that is the only solution for people, to have confidence in their own skills. Now, you have a big cortex that a gazelle doesn't have, and your cortex can anticipate future threats and future scenarios. And so you may be thinking of possible situations and how your skills may not be adequate to that. But the problem is that we are so good at anticipating potential future threats that we just do it all the time. And instead, we can do what the gazelle does. It is not focused on the lion. It is focused on the path ahead of it. And that's what you can do, is focus on the path ahead of you and have confidence in your own skills. So when you do that, when you focus on the path ahead of you, you are soon back to rewards. So when a gazelle focuses on getting away and then it goes back to eating, it's meeting its own needs, and that stimulates good feelings. And that's what you can do. When you focus on meeting your own needs, you stimulate your happy chemicals. And that's the job your brain is designed to do. But so many people don't do that. And I'll give you a couple of reasons. So one is watching the news, And another is bonding with other people who feel threatened. So you have threat signals constantly being activated. And the final reason is that you feel like, well, it would be rude to be happy while other people are suffering. And maybe I need to write a whole new book on that topic, but if we go a little more into the theory, maybe you'll get, right, that's a good, maybe that should be the title of the book. But for now, let me go more into the job that your brain is designed to do to help you understand your power to create good feelings despite what the rest of the world is doing. So our brain is designed to scan for, oh, by the way, Joan, would you please give me a 5 minutes left signal?
Yes, I will.
Okay, thanks. Okay. Our brain is designed to scan for threats and rewards. So we are always looking for potential threats and potential rewards because imagine from an animal perspective that animals don't have a refrigerator, they don't have a supermarket, and they don't have the news. So they're constantly scanning for signals and then responding to those signals with a good chemical when they see a way to meet their needs, and a bad chemical when they see a threat or obstacle to meeting their needs. And that's what we are doing with that core part of our brain. More on this later. When you see something bad for your survival, your brain alarms you with cortisol, the threat chemical. When you see something good for your survival, your brain rewards you with happy chemicals. And these are the 4 that I focus on in my book, but in today's presentation, we'll only have time for 2 of them. Threats get priority, which means that your brain focuses on threats signals before reward signals, because in the animal world, a threat can kill you instantly, whereas doing without a meal doesn't kill you instantly. So that's why we prioritize our threat. So if we allow that big human cortex of ours to anticipate and effectively manufacture potential threats, we will never be focused on rewards. Now, in the animal world, what gets it back to rewards is it's hungry. When you're hungry, looking for rewards relieves the threat of being hungry. But in the human world, when your belly is full, you can just spin around in your threat loop all the time. That's the problem of having a life that's too easy, but we don't recognize that, so we persuade ourselves that our lives are too hard. That's another good topic for a whole book. So because the brain evolved to promote survival, not to make you happy. So in my work, I constantly go back to our ancestors, which you can imagine as 50,000 years ago, or 1 million years ago, or 7 million years ago. Those of you who are into this know why I chose 7 million years ago, because that is allegedly the common ancestor with apes. So no matter how you look at it, in my next book, I follow through with all of them. Our brain is not designed to focus on being happy. It's designed to focus on keeping your genetic material alive. Now, you may say, well, I don't care about keeping my genetic material alive, but that's what your verbal brain is thinking. But your verbal brain doesn't control the happy chemicals. So natural selection built a brain that rewards you with happy chemicals when you do something that keeps your genes alive. And that's why what it takes to stimulate your happy chemicals is so hard to make sense of with your verbal brain. We have 2 brains because we need both. And if they work together, we can stimulate our happy chemicals in healthy ways. Otherwise, they can fight each other. And one part of your brain says, I'm not wasting my happy chemicals on that. And another brain says, well, that's not what I was thinking. So that's the war between your 2 brains. That is the subject of my newest book called Tame Your Anxiety. My newest next book is about competitiveness. So Cortisol tells your brain to gather evidence about threats, and that's what people are doing right now. Cortisol creates a full body sense of alarm that lasts for about an hour. Cortisol has a half-life of 20 minutes. So every 20 minutes, you are excreting another half of what's left. In an hour that it's still in your body, you keep looking for evidence of threat. And your big brain is so good at finding evidence of threat that you stimulate more cortisol, and that's what causes the spiral that many people get into. Here's another way of looking at it. While cortisol is in my system and I'm looking for threats, I try to get work done, or I try to have a conversation with a friend, and my cortisol looks for the bad side of whatever it is I'm doing. You can learn to stay focused on rewards instead. Your reward chemicals, we talked about. Now, we've inherited these chemicals from earlier mammals. They evolved to do a job, not to flow all the time for no reason. So we need to know the job they evolved to do. Can I ask you a question, Joan? Do you see me also, or do you only see the presentation?
I'm only seeing the presentation, and so is the audience, isn't it?
Oh, okay.
Let me hear you.
Okay.
Wendy, Geraldine, are you seeing only the presentation right now?
Okay. It's in some platforms you see both, so I'm just wondering. Okay. I will continue.
Yes.
So we stimulate our happy chemicals with neural pathways built from our unique past experience. So whatever makes you feel good, whatever makes you feel bad, it's caused by the pathways from past experience with that chemical. You can think of these chemicals as paving on your neural pathways, and that's why we have sort of unique responses to the world, and yet our responses overlap a lot because our early experience as children overlaps a lot because we are just mammals born into a world without knowing how to meet our needs and feeling threatened. Your past cortisol wired you to avoid similar threats in the future. So you don't touch a hot stove twice because the first time pain builds a neural pathway that warns you the next time. So pain is the core trigger of cortisol. So anything that caused you pain in the past, anything that caused you pain in your youth built a huge neural pathway. And in the future, when you keep looking for threats in order to avoid harm, you look for whatever hurt you before. And that's why in today's threatening situation, it's amazing that one person looks for one threat and one person looks for another threat. So each of us is interpreting this in our own way. And it's really fascinating if you might chat about this with friends. And one person is worried about the situation because of X. And if you think about it, like X is just like what happened to them in their past. And you are worried about it because of Y. And it just happens to be just like what happened to you in your past. And that helps you say, wow, I'm just activating new chemicals in old pathways. And that helps you see that it's not the world you're reacting to, but the world that your limbic system has constructed. The same with rewards. Your past rewards were wired you to seek similar rewards in the future. Each of us sees the world through the lens of our own past experience. But when the world changes, your old lens is unreliable. So all of you maybe were good at productivity in your past. You were good at managing anxiety in your past. You were good at building social bonds in your past. But when the whole world changes, whatever you did in your past may not work anymore because things are just not accessible to you. So that's when it's useful to know that you have more options than you realized. You just don't see your options because you see the world through the lens of those old pathways. And the simple solution is to remind yourself that you have billions of other neural pathways that you can, I'm sorry, I said it wrong again. You have billions of more neurons. You have billions of extra neurons just sitting around waiting for you to activate. But it's hard to activate them because they're not connected. And the reason they're not connected is because our neurons are not connected when we're born. That's what makes us different from animals. We build connections from repetition in youth. When your youth is over, then it just takes a lot more repetition. And it's exactly like learning a foreign language. And I'm so grateful to those of you who learned English to speak to me today. And that you can remind yourself that you have the power to build new neural pathways in your emotional brain as well as your verbal brain. But in the short run, you don't know how to get rewards or avoid harm because you're relying on your old neural pathways. The reason you're relying on them is normal and natural, and nothing is wrong with you. So I know that there are a lot of philosophies out there that criticize you for using autopilot, but in fact, we're designed to use autopilot because it makes us more efficient, but we're also designed to be able to update our autopilot, but not much. And the reason not much is explained in detail in my book, but because of the interest of time, I'm going to move on to more practical tools. So what's a big-brained mammal to do? You can build new pathways to stimulate your dopamine, oxytocin, and serotonin in new ways. And if time runs out, I will not get to serotonin, but I will be thrilled to answer that in the questions. So first, new paths to dopamine. Dopamine is the expectation of a reward. So you are excited when you see a possibility of a reward and you move toward it. And each step closer stimulates more dopamine. So imagine a monkey wakes up in the morning, he's hungry, he doesn't have a refrigerator. So he looks around for food and he says, wow, there's something I can get. And that's the feeling we long for, is the first step of, wow, there's something I can get. Then that's partly trusting in your own skills. You take the first step. And when you see that you're getting closer, more dopamine is released. So you take another step and another. But when you finally get to the reward, the dopamine stops because it has already done its job. And that is the frustration of life. Now, some of you may be thinking that you are too sophisticated to care about rewards. And this is unfortunately another one of those philosophies that is currently trendy. And I will move on to more biology to help us think deeper. So dopamine feels good because it releases energy. We want that great dopamine feeling. And imagine now in this scenario that you are the lion. I know it's hard to think that way. And so for the lion, it takes 100% releasing of their reserve tank of energy to get food. And so your belly is already full of food. So you don't get that much dopamine from you get a little bit like you're thinking about what am I going to eat when this session is over. But we all do that, but not that much, right? So what gets you really excited? The simple answer from an animal perspective is it has to meet an unmet need. So a simple example of meeting an unmet need is in the ancient past, our ancestors, maybe they could find leaves to eat every day, but it would be like if you had only salad to eat with no salad dressing every day. So you wouldn't get very excited about that. But if you found a different food, you would get very excited. But if you had a different food every day, then that would not excite you anymore. But if you found another different food, that would excite you. So each new food group meets a new need. So our brain is designed to get excited about meeting the unmet need and does not get excited about what you already have. And that's why people have a treadmill feeling. And that's why, even though you think you're so sophisticated and beyond this treadmill view of life, that's the job that your brain evolved to do. So the good feeling of dopamine motivates action to meet needs. But our action often fails, and failure is frustrating. And to understand that frustration, I'm going to show you a little short video. So you are going to watch this monkey fail and fail and fail. Now you have to understand why this monkey is so desperate. He's trying to crack open a nut. And in the monkey world, you need protein and fat from nuts in order to build strength. Now this monkey is being kicked out by a bigger, stronger monkey. So now he's lost his chance. In the monkey world, when you're born, you get protein and fat from your mother's milk. But after that, you have no protein and fat until you open nuts yourself. Nobody will crack nuts for you, not even your mother. So if you don't build the skill of cracking your own nuts, then you will just not get any protein and you will not have any muscles. And if you're a mom, you will not have rich milk. You will not build strong babies, and your genes will not get passed on. If you're a male, you will miss out on the competition for mating opportunity. So animals have a sort of desperate feeling about that skill of what it takes to meet their needs, and yet they fail a lot. So it's good to know that the brain evolved to manage failure and to persevere and to manage that feeling that I'm not getting a reward. And then you watch other people getting rewards. You watch other monkeys crack open nuts, and they don't share their nuts with you because that's not how the monkey world works. So what you do in my book, it explains we have mirror neurons where you watch and learn from the skills of others. And you are probably doing that in many ways. So each step closer to a goal stimulates more dopamine. So maybe you crack the nut open a little, or maybe you find a more skilled person to learn from. So we're constantly looking for ways to take steps toward meeting needs, and that stimulates a little bit of dopamine with each step. So you can find a step that you can take before lunch. Well, for me, it's before lunch. For you, it's before breakfast, let's say. So you can constantly be setting small goals and stepping toward them and enjoying dopamine. So don't worry about the goals you had in the past. Just constantly set small goals for yourself. And in addition, I talk more when I have more time about middle-term goals and long-term goals. We need all of them so that we can always be stepping toward one goal when another goal is blocked. Your brain releases the good feeling when you predict a reward, but now life is unpredictable. So I used to love planning for some future event that I had and another future event I had. And probably you're like me, like you planned for a while and then you just gave up. You're like, oh, it doesn't even bother to plan because nobody knows. So that's why we have to find creative new ways to still get excited about building skills and taking continual small steps toward meeting our needs. Focus on a goal you will step toward. Now, small steps are enough to stimulate dopamine. And the fun example, I don't know if you have ever watched mountain goats, but this hill that they're on this mountain is practically vertical. And yet they can climb up it. Watch this on YouTube. It's amazing. And they can do it because they take tiny steps. And by the way, I have to credit David Attenborough for so much of my animal knowledge, and Habits of a Happy Brain is dedicated to him. And for your inspiration, in case you don't know, he's 95 years old. And not only did he originate nature videos, but he's still making them. So just a heads up for that. So I'm going to move forward, plan a short-run goal, a long-run goal, and a middle-term goal, and you will keep feeling good. Now, new paths to oxytocin. Oxytocin is the pleasure of social trust. You have probably seen images, again, thank you, David Attenborough, of monkeys grooming each other's fur, and this is a big use of their time and energy. And we primates have a way of creating reciprocal bonds. And again, you probably think you're too sophisticated to be reciprocal, but in fact, that's how your limbic system works. So it is looking for acceptance and belonging, because social support makes us feel safe, because it allows us to lower our guard. And when you lower your guard, that's the good feeling of oxytocin. So if you were a gazelle cannot eat if it's constantly looking around for predators. It has to be able to lower its head and eat. And it does that more easily when it's with a group. So we evolved to look for a group to feel social support, to lower our guard, and that stimulates oxytocin. Now, what I told you is the romanticized view that many of us have heard, but it's more complicated. And in the time remaining, how much time is remaining?
Oh, we're still another 10 minutes.
Good, okay. So I have
15
5 minutes to tell you why it's much more complicated and how we can be practical about stimulating that good feeling of oxytocin, and then we'll have 5 minutes to conclude. So oxytocin is released when it's safe to lower your guard. And from an animal perspective, this is not because they're saying, oh, I love you so much, I will give up my life for you. It's just the opposite. They are pushing their way to the center of the herd so that another guy gets eaten and they are safe. Now, I know this sounds very crude, but if you ever have that feeling that other people are pushing their way to the center of the herd in order to feel safe, I want to say that it's easy to see that in others, but it's hard to accept that you're a mammal, and when you push your way to try to be safe, that you're telling yourself, oh, I'm just doing this because I want to survive. So I will move on, but that uncomfortable thought is explained in more detail in all of my books. So the bottom line, when you're separated from the herd, your oxytocin falls. And that's how many people are feeling right now. Now, again, all of these have both sides of the story. In the baboon world, this has been studied the most. When baboons smell a predator, they gather close and they stick together to fight the predator. But when they don't smell a predator, guess what? They spread out, because it's annoying to have other baboons in your face all the time. And this is the pros and cons of human life, that when you are in a group, you're often frustrated with them, admit it. But when you are isolated, you feel like you're going to die. So that's the complication of being a mammal. We long to feel that safety of social support, but when we have it, we take it for granted. When we take it for granted, we try to meet other needs, and to do that, we distance, because when animals distance, it's easier for them to find food. But as soon as they distance, their oxytocin falls. And then they're like, whoa, maybe that's too much distance. Maybe I should make some efforts to reconnect. So our brain is designed to constantly make decisions about How much distance, how much connection? And from a large human cortex perspective, we are aware of time. So you could say, how much time and energy should I spend connecting, and how much time should I spend focusing on my own goals? And you can applaud yourself for your ability to constantly make this decision. And when you know that you have power over this decision, then the world feels less threatening. You don't have to worry that the herd has moved without you or the herd has abandoned you. But you are creating the herd in your brain through your decisions of how much energy to invest in connecting with others. And you have control over that. You can't control others. So one person, you try to connect with them and they may not be there. And then you have to try someone else, because your monkey brain is able to accept failure and keep trying. Now, that's only part of the complication. So it gets even more complicated. So when you're home alone, plan ways to stimulate the good feeling of social trust. So you're probably hearing a lot about that now, of planning efforts to reach out to others. But the important thing is it's about trust. It's not just about time or herds and acceptance. It's about real trust. Now, to understand this, imagine you're a monkey and I'm a monkey, and I want to groom your fur. Now, if I am close enough to touch you, I am close enough to kill you. So you have to make a careful decision about whether or not you trust me. And in the animal world, if you make a bad decision about trust, you can get killed in a second. So our brain is not designed to release oxytocin all the time. It's designed to save the oxytocin for situations of real trust. So that's the point. If you just join any Zoom with anybody and you don't feel any sense of trust, you don't get much oxytocin. But if you have just a moment of connection where you really feel understood, you get more trust. Now, again, there's an upside and a downside of this. It's complicated because many people, you're home alone with somebody in your family and you feel like they don't understand you. And then you get mad at them for not understanding you, and then your oxytocin falls. So the bottom line is that no one person can understand everything about you. One person understands this about you and another person understands that. So it's your responsibility to constantly reach out on different subjects to different people and build new trust. And my secret strategy is this: anyone that you have bad will with, anything that's gone wrong in the future, if you try to build new trust by taking a tiny step to repair that old situation, you may have such a thrilling feeling like, wow, that may just trigger, because you're meeting a real need. So that may really help. It's a good trust strategy, in my opinion. Animals have plenty of conflict in their social groups. You can see that. Plenty of conflict. So again, you may be in Zoom groups and they may be on your nerves. So you know that it's this more to life than just connecting. Even though everyone is telling you connection, your big human cortex is looking for a deeper connection. And as soon as you have it, your big brain takes it for granted, and then it looks for new connection, because that's how our brain works. Now, at this point, I can either give you a quick conclusion or take questions. Should I go 5 more minutes or take questions?
5 minutes. I think we still have time. It's 20 minutes past 8. We start later. I hope that, anyways, the audience will get the replay link. So if anyone should leave at on time, then go ahead.
Okay.
Please keep talking.
Okay.
I'm just hanging on to your every word you're saying. I find this mightily interesting.
Thank you so much. Okay. So sometimes animals are mean to each other, but they make up because in nature, isolation equals death. Now, I have to make a side note here that there is Frans de Waal, who many of you may know of because he is Dutch.
Yes.
He was Dutch in origin and did his PhD dissertation at the Arnhem Zoo. And his book called Chimpanzee Politics was one of the big steps that got me interested in this subject. It was one of the books I read after 9/11. And I have to tell you that my 60th birthday I spent at the Arnhem Zoo because it was such a meaningful thing to me. And it was so sad because those chimpanzees there were the same ones that Frans de Waal studied in the 70s. They were like old as me, or were. They didn't look great. But anyway, they've done their service to the world. But I have to also say that my work is not represented at all by the later work of Frans de Waal, because in my opinion, if I may dare say, he is not like in each of these chemicals, I focus on like the pros and cons, and he has devoted himself to what I call the romantic view of the animal brain, and is completely, he and the academic world are completely ignoring the side of animal impulses that doesn't sound progressive. So, but he has written a book about animals making up, so that's why I'm giving him credit for that. Create opportunities to build trust, and your brain will reward you with oxytocin. Small steps are enough to build new pathways if you keep doing it. But what do I mean by new pathways? So, as you know, if you just keep chatting with the usual people in your life, that you may not get that much feeling out of it. And you may even be tempted to blame them. So it's very important to know how your brain works, that your brain habituates to the rewards you have and looks for new rewards. And I am not saying this, that you should find new sex partners, excuse me for saying, because long-term relationships have rewards. And that's why I'm saying that it's very important not to blame the people in your life for your oxytocin dips, but to take the initiative to build new trust in new ways, however you define that. You have power over your brain chemicals, but that power is hard to find because we have two brains, the brain that talks to you in words and the brain you inherited from earlier animals. You've probably heard a bit about the limbic system and these small structures, and it's not about the individual structures, but it's the fact that at this core limbic system, that it's the same that animals have, and our big cortex is quite unique. And the cortex creates language. And so when you talk to yourself, it's all in your cortex, but your cortex does not control your chemicals. So your two brains have to work together in order to feel good in healthy ways, rather than to try to feel good in, we could say, primal ways. So when you understand your animal brain, you can turn on your happy chemicals in new ways. And there's one more really important point that we need to get to. We've done this. Okay, repeat a new habit daily and you will build a new trail through your jungle of neurons. So you have those billions of extra neurons, but it's hard to activate them. That's why when you try something new, it feels wrong, because your old pathways are paved by myelin and electricity flows along them effortlessly. Whereas your new pathways, it's hard to send electricity along neurons that are not already connected. And that's why it takes so much repetition. But if you keep doing a new behavior, you will build a new pathway in your brain. Now, here's the important thing. You will give the electricity in your brain a new place to flow. So the electricity in your brain flows like water in a storm. It finds the paths of least resistance. So when you see a big waterfall, that waterfall is there not because someone decided that a waterfall should be there and engineered it, but because that's a pathway that gravity created and repetition made it big. So that's what your old habits in your brain are. Repetition made them big. And because your electricity flows there so easily, you believe that it's true. You believe that it's reality. And so you don't realize that you have so many other options. And you know what? I took NLP many years ago. And in order to give them credit, the way they said it to me was, life is a mansion with many rooms, and you might spend your whole life in one or two rooms without realizing that the other rooms are there. So once you build new pathways, you start expecting to feel good. So expecting means that the pathway is there, so the electricity flows there more easily. So you will start expecting to feel trust. You start expecting to get new rewards from dopamine because you have made it happen before. But the first few times you do it, it will feel wrong. So you have to be aware that some repetition is necessary at first. You will be glad you did it. So here's info about my book. And here's my new book, Tame Your Anxiety, Rewiring Your Brain for Happiness. Here's my middle book, The Science of Positivity, Stop Negative Thought Patterns by Changing Your Brain Chemistry. And this book is highly recommended at this moment because many people are watching the news and becoming cynical about watching too much news, which really builds our negativity. And this book is about why negativity is natural. And other people may always be negative. So you may have to, oops, oh, okay. And so maybe you can see me now. I don't know.
This is
No,
a
maybe.
picture with you.
Oh,
What are you doing there?
I see. Okay. Okay. So this is my website.
Okay.
Oops. The URL got messed up. I'll have to fix that. But this is one of my videos. So if you go to my website, you'll see many videos, books, podcasts, a training program, and you can get a free 5-day happy chemical jumpstart by putting your email address in the pop-up. And I would love to hear from you if you don't get your question in now. So now I'm going to turn off the, okay, hello.
Back again. Hello, Loretta.
Hi, nice to see you.
Nice to
And
meet you too. That was wonderful.
thank you so much.
I could listen way longer because there's so much that you have to tell. And there's so
Thank
much
you.
going on in our brain. Who knows, we'll have you someday back again here.
Thank you.
In the meantime, there have been a couple of questions in the chat box. So I'd like to address the first one by Octavian. And the question is, does intermittent fasting have an effect on dopamine release? Fasting or intermittent fasting? You have
So here's the idea. Simple that everything boils down to. Our happy chemicals evolved to do a job, not to flow all the time for no reason. So if I am fasting and I am thinking constantly about food, well, it may give me more dopamine, but it doesn't really help me get new rewards if I'm, how do I explain this? If I have a new goal and I get excited about my goal, that excitement is dopamine. If I'm just getting excited about my last meal, after a while, if I just get excited about my next meal, after a while, I'm just getting excited about my next meal is not a new reward. So you want to be able to direct your thoughts and your energy to some new reward rather than just food. Now, many people who do intermittent fasting, they have another goal, and that other goal could be health, could be focus, could be weight loss and attractiveness. Whatever that other goal is, I think that on some level, you feel like you're doing something toward that other goal. Now, if that is working, hooray, keep doing it. But if it's not working, know that you have many options and you can reach that new goal and be open-minded toward different ways of reaching it, but be honest with yourself about your real underlying goal. Okay?
That's clear. Octavian, I think you got your question answered there. So you're saying it's good to have like a priority. What you want most will kick in your dopamine.
If you perceive that you are getting closer to it, it will kick in your dopamine. If you give up and you think this is hopeless, this is not working, I will never get X, then you don't get dopamine. And that's why I'm saying to be open-minded to different ways to get X rather than giving up.
Right. Here's another question from Fijian. She asks, some researchers found out that female dogs that have less or no oxytocin are prone to kill their puppies. Does oxytocin
Yes.
play a major role in parenting?
Absolutely. This, I could go on for hours about this. So let me limit myself to 2 short sentences. Oxytocin distinguishes mammals from reptiles. All of my books explain this, and my next book will explain it more. So, in reptiles, oxytocin stimulates the egg-laying muscle. When a reptile lays an egg, when humans give birth, when mammals give birth, oxytocin stimulates the uterine contractions, and then it stimulates the milk. And then it stimulates the parenting behavior, which is just trust. And in reptiles, the baby doesn't trust the mother, and the mother doesn't trust the baby. And in reptiles, the mother will eat the baby, so it runs away the instant it's born. And if it doesn't run fast enough, it gets eaten. So now you can see how primal oxytocin is. Now, I was a volunteer in a zoo for many years. So my other answer to this question is the degree to which parenting is learned, because we have seen that in nature, animals live in groups, and a young girl learns from the parenting of the other mothers in the group. And if she sees a baby, it's like, I want to touch it. But if she's too rough with the baby, then the mother bites it. So it's like, I can't touch a baby unless I control myself. So they learn that control. But if they grow up in a zoo, they don't learn that control. So parenting is learned, but it's still oxytocin, because our oxytocin circuits are built from experience. And that's why it's so important to know that, because people write to me and they say, I have low oxytocin, I have low dopamine, because the medical model has created this idea that it's just a chemical that comes from nowhere, which I think takes away your power.
I agree with you. And just a small question for myself. Does it help now that people are alone to just, someone suggested this to me. Have you say when we hug each other, there's a release of oxytocin. When you hug yourself, you give yourself hugs. Does that release oxytocin? Or stroking your or dog?
Good question. So this is the advice that is being widely spread on the internet, because there's a lack of understanding of the evolutionary function of these chemicals, so they're viewed in isolation. So yes, touch is related to oxytocin, but for the reason I said, that if anyone is close enough to touch me, they're close enough to kill me. So I will not let them touch me unless I trust them. So trust is what really matters. So touch is good, but if you are just touching yourself and you hate everyone else in the world, and you know what I mean by this, then then you're not benefiting as much as you could. So fine, trust yourself, touch yourself, but also build your skill of trusting others in small steps that you repeat, and you are able to persevere even though you will fail some of the time. Okay. Now, in addition to having said that, in addition to touching yourself, hugging a dog, hugging the people you're with, I mean, it's all good, but just to know that trust is underneath it.
Yes, clear. Thank you very much. And Fijian says also thank you very much. There's another question from Christina. She's asking, is there a difference in brain chemical behavior in regarding gender or age?
Gender or age. Oh, okay. So the short answer is that I focus on what is universal. And you can see that these core needs are universal in men and women. And although there are differences in our sex hormones, there are these core motivations to meet our needs, to trust. Serotonin is to feel pride, and endorphin is to mask pain. So I just don't focus on male-female differences because it's like an endless debate. And at the core, it's the same things. Like, I'll give you a simple example, though. In the animal world, there is a quantity strategy versus a quality strategy, which is males can potentially have an unlimited number of children, and females have very strictly limited number of genes, of reproduction opportunities. So it creates a little bit of a difference in life strategy, let's say, but my books explain all of this in detail. And the age, the other one was age. I think that there's two views of age, and the cliches, like one view is like people becoming more bitter with age, and others people becoming more happy with age. So my feeling is that
I'm in the second group.
Happy, yes, me too.
I'm happy with age.
Me too. And yet I can't tell you how many of the bitter ones I know. And so we can't deny that that is there. And so anyone who wants to point to statistics, I spent 25 years as a college professor, and my observation is that you can produce statistics to prove anything. And so I just advise people to focus on yourself rather than to focus on the world or society. But here's a simple answer about age. I do believe that we don't manufacture as much of the chemicals, but that means we can. But we have, with maturity, you can build what I call an exit ramp. When you are on a highway, autobahn, that you are used to doing the same thing, but when you can exit from the autobahn and you can go on the small roads, it's harder to do that when you're young. But when you're older, you can build the skill of doing that. And that frees you from just repeating your old habits.
Wow. Wow. I'm taking in all this information. I'm seeing myself doing that, taking the
Yay! Yay!
yes, moving away from what you already know and taking it a little bit easier. Maybe not wanting to go that fast. Yeah. So thank you so much. Karine had a question about serotonin.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, I know, but we've been addressing mainly the dopamine and oxytocin. Right. So serotonin is pride.
So let's have
If
yes. So I call it pride. So the important thing is to know that that mammals are very competitive with each other. And they do that because natural selection built a brain that rewards you with serotonin when you're in the one-up position. And when an animal is in the one-up position, they get more food and more mating opportunity, so more of their babies survive. And so even though you are not trying to make more babies, and even though you are too enlightened to try to be in the one-up position, your brain rewards you with serotonin when you feel like you have more social importance than the person next to you. Because in the animal world, when there's a banana, the stronger individual reaches for the banana and the weaker individual pulls back. And so the animal brain, when it's always comparing you to others, and when you see that you are stronger than others, serotonin is released and it feels good. And that good feeling is metabolized in a few minutes, and you want the good feeling again. So the truth is, you are constantly comparing yourself to others. And when you feel like you are stronger, you get a good feeling. When you feel like you are weaker, you get a bad feeling. And so this dynamic is so uncomfortable and is so risky that people have tried to control it by denying that it's there. All through human history, people have tried different ways to control it. And I am trying to control it with the truth. So if you can take responsibility for your own urge to dominate, and all of my books, especially the one that will come out next year, are about how to stimulate this good feeling in healthy ways by admitting to yourself that you do care about being in the one-up position and you are comparing yourself to others. And how can I take pride in myself in healthy ways instead of putting other people down?
I understand, but there's a lot about cultures as well and what is done and not done, these structures where we live in that kind of define our behavior. Are also playing an important part, of course. And the more aware you are of that, and the more you can question what is true and what is really needed, and how can I start to live more from my own core. I also strongly believe that is the way to go, to stay close to yourself versus comparing yourself to the what's going on around
Yes.
you in the outside world, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But I have to say that I took a yoga class for 10 years, and it was considered to be a conscious spiritual yoga class. And they were constantly feeling superior about their spirituality. So just being conscious and spiritual does not eliminate this, because if you are just feeling superior to people who are less conscious and spiritual than you, then you're just doing the same old thing in a new way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I can see that. Where do you draw the line where you find yourself in imbalance?
Where, you said?
Where do you feel yourself being in balance?
Oh, where do I feel like I'm
I mean, what does it mean to feel superior, right? What is the standard?
oh,
It's actually
oh,
actually
I see.
what I mean.
Well, This is a very tricky thing, and that's why I think what it is to be aware that you have an inner mammal, and imagine that you're having like a dialogue between your new human brain and your inner mammal, and to admit that your inner mammal wants to feel superior, and so your higher human brain is going to give your inner mammal that sense of being superior, but still control the urge to act on that when you're with anyone that you might feel superior to.
Thank you so much. I see that some people are leaving. Doa still has a question about, can you explain more about the exit and maturity if we have time?
Yes.
Yes, do we
Yes.
have a couple
Yes.
of minutes?
Yes, that's a very good question. So it all has to do with a chemical called myelin. How do you say myelin in Dutch?
Myelin. I think
M-Y, yeah.
myelin.
Yes. So myelin is fat that coats a neuron the way insulation coats a wire. And that makes our neurons up to 100 times more efficient. So everything you do with your myelinated neurons is easy. So when you speak your native language, you are using myelinated neurons, and that's why it seems to come to you effortlessly, even though when you were a child, it actually took a lot of work to learn your native language. Now, if you try learning a new language in adulthood, it's harder because adults have less myelin. So we have a lot of myelin before age 8 and during puberty, and that's why we build new superhighways, new autostrada in our brains when we are, see, I'm Italian, so I but I'm Californian. The California word is freeway, and even that doesn't, so we build new highways in our brain, and when we're young. And when we're older, it's harder to build new highways. It takes a lot of repetition. And even then, the new pathway is often not going to be myelinated. The simple example is maybe you've studied a foreign language and you still struggle to speak it. And when maybe if you spend 2 weeks in Italy, you could speak Italian, but then if you don't go to Italy for 2 years, then you still can't speak it again. So it's hard to build new pathways in adulthood. But if I were to live in Italy for a year, I would build them. You know what I'm saying? But it would be hard. So you have to be willing to invest the effort. And the way I say it is you have to be willing to walk on a small trail instead of being in the comfortable Autobahn.
Mm-hmm.
And that's maturity, is that the courage to try something new because you know that the old Autobahn is an illusion.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting words. Doa. Doa?
Doa?
Yes, this is the question from Doa. And for sure, it has given food for more thought. Just a last question that I have for you. People are leaving. 21 days, I've heard, is a time when you repeat your new skill and the new desired behavior. 21 days is like then the new pathway is there.
Yes. So in my books, I wrote 45 days because I heard that in a yoga class. But there's so much controversy about the number of days that I don't use a number of days anymore. So now what I like to say is what's important is that you do that many days, whatever your goal is, but start over if you miss a day. So you should do it every day, because the day that you say, oh, I'm not going to do it, you're telling yourself it's not really important. And then you're building the old pathway that says, I don't really have to do it. It's not really important. So that's part of it. And also, however many days you choose, to know that it will be hard in the beginning, but it will get easier. That's the point. But the point is that you plan on doing this thing the rest of your life. So the number of days is not important. It's the fact that it will be hard at first, and then it will get easier.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Loretta. This was very enlightening. There's some words that you use that really struck a chord. We have options. We can choose and we can change our behaviors. We can always learn, even in older age. Does it require more effort? Yes, but since we have already learned in the past, we know that we can, and we always can. So
Yes.
this was really wonderful. I want to thank you so much, and I also liked that you took an NLP course, although it was long ago. You know that you have the chance on 2 June to see Richard Bentel live with us. We'll be hosting
yes.
a webinar. So you're most welcome to join in. I'll send you the link. And really interesting. Everybody's saying goodbye. So bye, Loretta. I'm going to
bye.
over.
So nice to meet you.
Thank you so much.
Soon. Bye.
Thank you. And I'll be sharing with all of you the contact info from Loretta, the books that she wrote. Again, The Habits of a Happy Brain is really insightful. You can read quietly about all these 4 chemicals, and she addressed the 2 most important in these times. Dopamine and oxytocin, because we have challenging situations at home, maybe not for yourself personally, but people around you, people who you know are really suffering in these times. So you probably have tips now, and you'll receive the replay link tomorrow. Please, when this webinar is stopped, you'll be asked to fill in the survey. If you could kindly do that. Next week, we have another presentation by Marco Valerio Ricci, an NLP master trainer from Italy. Bellissimo. And he knows everything about influential language and using hypnotizing language. So stay tuned. I wish you a great evening. Thank you for being here, and hope to see you soon. Stay safe. Bye, guys and dolls. Goodbye.